There are still lots of businesses not quite getting their multi-factor authentication right in Microsoft 365. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you my 7-step process for better MFA in Microsoft 365. But before we get into all of that, let's have a quick introduction. My name is Jonathan Edwards, also known as the Bearded 365 Guy. Now, I help businesses all over the world with their Microsoft 365. You can find more information at bearded365guy.com. So we all know that having a good MFA strategy is one of the key things that we need to get right in our business. But within Microsoft 365, there are so many MFA configurations. Plus, Microsoft are currently migrating their MFA system from one place to another. So there's a lot to talk about in today's video. But we're going to start with step 1, and that is all about Legacy MFA. Now, as the name suggests, Legacy MFA is the old way that we used to do MFA in Microsoft 365. Microsoft are wanting you to migrate from Legacy MFA to the new way, which is called Authentication Methods Policies. Now, the Legacy MFA is due to be discontinued on the 25th of September 2025. As I'm recording this video in October 2024, we've got 11 months, which in IT terms isn't very long. So let me begin this video with showing you how you can migrate from Legacy MFA to the new Authentication Methods Policy. Let's go. So welcome to my test Microsoft 365 tenancy. How did we traditionally manage MFA in Microsoft 365? Well, we went to Users, Active Users, and then we've got an MFA button just here. And we click on there, and that would load this page here. We've got a list of users. We've got the MFA authentication status. We've also got a tab along the top here called Service Settings. And that would tell us if we allowed app passwords, any trusted IPs, and then the verification options that we allowed in our Microsoft 365. Now you can see here there's a few modern verification options that are missing, notably passkeys. So that's the traditional way. What are Microsoft moving towards? Well, back in the Admin Center, if we scroll down to Admin Centers and Identity, and then under Identity, Protection, Authentication Methods. So here we are. This is the new way to manage MFA in 365. Now at the minute, as I'm filming this video, we're kind of in no man's land, okay? So at the moment, Microsoft 365 will be respecting these policies, and it will also be paying attention to these policies here. So it's my advice to migrate to this as soon as you can. You can see there's a big banner here called Manage Migration. And it just confirms that on September the 30th, 25, the legacy multi-factor authentication will be depreciated. So that is this here, okay? We've then got a tab to click on here, which is Manage Migration, and it'll tell us where we are on our migration journey. So at the moment, we are migration in progress. So we can use policy for authentication and SSPR, so use this, but respect legacy policies. So that's what I mean by being stuck in no man's land. We're kind of in the middle. We really need to get to this here, migration complete. So we want to use the policy for authentication and SSPR, this policy here, and ignore legacy policies. So how do we get to that point? Well, the first step is to make sure that you've got some authentication methods enabled here, targeting all users. So you can see in this tenant, we've got passkey, authenticator, and SMS all switched on, and all targeting all users. So you can just simply go in here and you can enable that. Okay, so you've got to make sure that there's at least one authentication method enabled in this part here. What I would also do is go back to the Legacy MFA page, and I'd look what methods were available to users here, and I would replicate these. Okay, so text message to phone, notification through mobile app, and verification code. I would replicate those in here to all users just to make sure that the migration goes seamlessly. Now, you may have picked up that these naming conventions are slightly different in here. So if I just go to this Microsoft article here, which is how to migrate MFA, what I'm showing you now. If we scroll down, you can see that Microsoft have changed the names. So we've got the legacy names here, call to phone, text to mobile, and what that represents in the new authentication method policy, okay? So just go back to our Microsoft 365 and just make sure that you've replicated the multi-factor authentication methods and targeted all users for now, and you've enabled them, okay? So the next step, it all kind of depends where you are here. Now, I think most tenants at this point are going to be here, migration in progress. You might be at pre-migration, and if you are, I would then move along to migration in progress after you've configured the steps that I've just shown you. For us though, we're ready to now complete the migration, so we're essentially ready to disable the legacy policies, and I'm going to do that by going back to the Legacy MFA page, and I'm going to disable all of these, and I'm going to get a red banner telling me that I could lock out users and to ensure that I've got enough methods configured in the new policy. Well, we know we have, so that's okay. I'll click on save and it says update successful, so we're happy with that. Next up, we need to disable all the legacy self-service password reset options. So I'm going to go back to here, and this time I'm going to go to password reset and authentication methods, and I've got to clear these two here, and then I'm going to click on save, and that's saved my policy. Now I'm ready to go back to authentication methods, manage migration. Migration complete, and I'm going to click on save, and it says successfully updated my migration state. So how can I test this is okay? Well, if I go back to the Legacy MFA page, and if I just refresh that, you can see here, look, all these settings are now grayed out, and it says these methods are now being managed in the authentication methods policy. Okay, so it's telling me to go there. So this is now defunct. I'll close that page here. And also to test, if I go to password reset, I go to authentication methods, you can see that these are grayed out as well. So I've successfully migrated from Legacy MFA over to authentication methods policy. Now let's move on to step 2. Step 2 is all about your MFA strategy. Now, I don't know where you are in your business with MFA. You might have a solid strategy, or you might not have one at all. So I thought it might be helpful to have a quick look at this image from Microsoft. As you can see, using just a password to access your Microsoft 365 isn't a good idea. It's not very secure, and it's something we absolutely need to move away from. Now, as we move along this graphic, as you can see, things start to get better. But we can also see that MFA isn't just MFA. Some kinds of MFA are more stronger than others. My advice isn't to use SMS or voice calls as MFA methods in your business. We should all be striving to use phishing-resistant MFA, and you can do all of this in Microsoft 365. So let's talk about the ideal solution using phish-resistant MFA. If you've got Windows devices, you'll log on to those with something called Windows Hello for Business, preferably using biometrics, so fingerprint or eyes. If you've got Mac devices in your business, you can use the equivalent of Windows Hello for Business. That is called Platform SSO, and once again, you can use biometrics. And to access your Microsoft 365 cloud apps, you can use something called passkeys. That would give you phish-resistant MFA across all of your business. That is an ideal solution. But I've worked in IT for 25 years, and I know that the ideal solution isn't always possible. We've had clients before who don't want to use their personal smartphones for work-related technology. We've had clients who don't want to receive a text message or carry security keys around. It's fair to say that no two businesses are the same. But once you've migrated away from Legacy MFA, we can be more granular with our MFA strategy. But before we move on to all that, let's go to step 3, auditing our environment. Now, it's really important that we know where our business is today when it comes to MFA. Who's got MFA? Who hasn't got MFA? What type of MFA are they using? Well, you get the idea. Now, we can do all of this by running a report from the Entra Admin Center. Let me show you how. So we need to audit our Microsoft 365 environment to find out who has MFA and who doesn't. I'm logged into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center as a global admin, just my test tenancy. If I go down to Admin Centers and Identity, and then under Identity, I need to go to Protection and Authentication Methods. And then under Monitoring, you can see User Registration Details. And I get this nice little graphic here. Now, I recommend that you go to Download and you start the download. And what that will do is download a CSV file, so you can interrogate it that way. There are some limitations and it might take a while to download. I've downloaded one already for ease of use. Here we are. So I've got all my user accounts in my Microsoft 365 tenancy. I've got everything. So I already know this is a guest account, but this gives me everything. So it's really handy. First thing I want to show you, the word capable appears here. So I've got MFA capable, passwordless capable, self-service password reset capable. You can assume that the word capable means configured, okay? So MFA configured, passwordless configured. So we've got Ellie here. She's configured MFA. She's configured passwordless MFA, but she's not done anything with the self-service password resets. We can also see what MFA method she has registered. So she's got Windows Hello for Business, the Authenticator app, and Software Auth token. And across here, here's a default method. So she's using the Authenticator app push notification. So that might be okay for your business. But immediately I can see we've got a problem here with Ian. So Ian intern, he's not configured MFA, he's not configured passwordless MFA, he's got no methods registered for MFA. So already that is a problem for me. So I would go through this and I would probably highlight Ian, so he will be a target for my emails. Now, it might be that Ian has never signed in. It might be that Ian is excluded from MFA because of some kind of conditional access policy. At this stage, I don't know, but I need to further my investigation. I can also then look at I know this is a global admin account, so what I will probably do there is highlight that as well, because I probably want some more strength on my global admin accounts, so that's something to look at later. And I know these accounts here, so this is a guest account. Again, there's no MFA there. So what this spreadsheet does is just give me a list of next actions. It lets me know where we are with MFA in our business. And then I can move on to the next step. That's getting users to register with MFA. Okay, let's move on to step 4. So you've done a report on all your users. You know where your gaps are. Plus, you've devised an effective MFA strategy. Now it's time to communicate with all your users about registering for MFA. And the best way to do this is to communicate with them. Now, you can build an MFA registration campaign right within Microsoft 365. But sometimes I prefer to just do this manually using email. What you're looking to implement is a series of email. Why MFA is important, exactly what changes you're going to make, and what you expect your users to do with step-by-step instructions. Let me give you an idea of what I mean. So getting people to register for MFA can be quite challenging. There's a couple of ways you can do it. Right within Microsoft 365, again, I'm in Identity, Protection, Authentication Methods. There is something called a registration campaign. And what you can do is remind people to set MFA up at different intervals. So we can switch this to enabled. We can set a snooze date, so people can snooze it for a maximum of so many days. You can limit the number of snoozers, and then you can add users and groups. What this is doing is getting people to sign up for the Microsoft Authenticator app. I think this sometimes is a little impersonal, and I like to try and get people to do it manually, and it's just all about education. So you might send an email like this. This is typical of something we might send. So we've identified Ian is the problem. So we're just basically telling him about MFA, what we're trying to achieve, and asking him if he can register for MFA. And to make it even easier for Ian, we've created a video. And this is just enable Authenticator MFA. It's an unlisted one on our YouTube channel, and we hope that people will watch the video. It's 2 minutes long. It shows them how to set up MFA with the Authenticator app. And then you just need to keep going back into your portal. You keep downloading this form, and you make sure that you paint it all green. So when you're happy with everybody, you put them as green. And when Ian's done what he needs to do, we'll put him green. And at the end of it, I want a green spreadsheet. Okay, so you've now got everyone registered for MFA. It's now time to implement more security. And to do that, we're going to be using a really powerful tool in Microsoft 365. It's called Conditional Access. Now, as the name suggests, you set conditions of access to access your Microsoft 365. So a really basic policy could be that everyone who wants to access your Microsoft 365 must have MFA enabled. If they don't get access. Now, to use conditional access in Microsoft 365, you've got to have something called Entra ID P1, or that is also included in Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So, without further ado, let me show you how to set a couple of basic conditional access policies for user MFA. So I'm back in the Entra Admin Center of my test tenancy. You need to be heading to Identity, Protection, and Conditional Access. That takes us to the Conditional Access Overview page. We can click on here and see all the policies that we've got set up on this tenancy. Or along the top, you can see I've got a couple of options. I can create a brand new policy, and this is a manual way to create a policy. But if you're new to conditional access, Microsoft have made it quite easy for you to get started. We've got this Create New Policy from Templates section. If I click on All along the top and Show More, we've got a lot of different policies that you can start using. So there's a few that I want to talk about when it comes to MFA. We've got Require Multi-Factor Authentication for admins. Now we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the video. But for now, and to get you started, once you're confident that everybody's got authentication methods in place, we can require multi-factor authentication for all users and require multi-factor authentication for guest access. So we click on here, we click on Create. Now we can call this something different if we've got a bit of a naming convention, or we can keep it as it is. And then this policy state once we create it. So it's either off, on, or report only. If you just want to report on it for a week or two, so you know if it's going to cause any impact, then you can click it as a report only. Please note that no security will be put in place if it's in report only. So we might want to be going for on. It's filled in with all users. It's filled in everything that we would do if we were manually creating it. And then we simply click on Create. And that policy has been created. Now, if I go over to my policies now, there's a lot of policies in here. As I said, it's a test tenancy. But you can see that my new policy is at the bottom and it's switched to on. So I can go ahead and create a new policy template. We'll click on All. We'll click on Show More. And we'll go ahead and do the same with Guest. So click on Next. Again, we can rename it. We can set it in Report Only. And then we can scroll down. And once we're happy, we can click on Create. So already we've got 2 conditional access policies in place now to make sure that all users and guests must have multi-factor authentication to access our data. That's a really good start. What happens next? Okay, we're now on to step 6. If you've implemented everything I've talked about in today's video, I think you're in a good spot. But there are a few more things that we can do. Now, we talked earlier in the video about different forms of MFA, and the best MFA is called phish-resistant MFA. Now, there are also some people in our business who are known as admins. This means they've got admin access to our Microsoft 365. So wouldn't it be great if we could put something in place to make sure that anyone who had admin access to our Microsoft 365 had to use the most secure way of MFA? Phish-resistant MFA? Well, we can, and these are called Authentication Strengths. Let me show you. So I'm back on the Conditional Access Policies page. Now, those 2 conditional access policies that I created previously, I've just set these to report only. As I said, this is just a test tenancy. But for now, I'm going to hop over to Authentication Methods, and then into Authentication Strengths. Now, as you can see, Microsoft have built in 3 authentication strength policies. These policies can't be deleted. These are built in. Of course, if you want to create your own authentication strength policy, you can by clicking on here, giving it a name, and selecting your authentication methods in there. Let's just look at these 3 that are built in. Firstly, we've got multi-factor authentication. So this is all the multi-factor authentication that is allowed. This is medium assurance. So for example, we're allowing using a password and SMS. It's still multi-factor authentication. It's still better than nothing, but there are more secure methods available. Then we move on to passwordless. This is a bit more secure. So we're allowing these methods: Windows Hello for Business, passkeys, certificate-based, or authenticator phone sign-in. And then we've got the phishing-resistant MFA. Okay, so Windows Hello for Business, passkeys, or certificate-based. These are the only things that we will allow. So it makes perfect sense to apply one of these authentication strengths to our admin accounts. What about this one here? Okay, so how would we do this? Well, the quickest way, you go back to policies and conditional access. You would usually build this out as a new policy, but the quickest way would be to create a new policy from template. Require MFA for admins. Click on next. I'm going to keep this in report only mode for now. So what this will do, it's going to exclude my current admin account, but it's going to include anybody who's a member of any of these administrator roles. Okay, so these are privileged accounts. It's when they are trying to access all apps, and at the moment it's set to this. But this is just the quickest way to create the policy. That creates the policy, and you can see that it's here. So what I would now do is just go into this, and this takes me to the manual page, so I can make some changes here. So this just summarizes exactly what we've done. We've selected all these roles. We've excluded the current account. We're targeting all cloud apps, and we've got a few other conditions here. But this is what I'm talking about here. This is what I'm most interested in, access controls. At the moment, we're saying that anyone who is in the admins, so any of these groups, can access our Microsoft 365, but they require multi-factor authentication. And we've got a bit of an information on here, look. Consider testing require authentication strength. So we're going to change this. So people who are part of these roles grant access to Microsoft 365, but we require phishing-resistant MFA. So that also includes the require MFA, but it has to be phishing-resistant. We click on select, and we click on save. Okay, so that policy is in place. Remember, it's report only at the moment. But what we're saying is all people who have privileged access to our Microsoft 365, they can have access to our Microsoft 365, but we require the top level of MFA, which is phishing resistant. Please don't create this policy and switch it on willy-nilly. Make sure that people don't get locked out, especially admin accounts, and make sure that they've got passkeys or other forms of phishing-resistant MFA set up before you switch it on. But it's a really good policy to have. We now move on to our final step, which is called emergency access accounts. So what are these? Well, the last thing that we want to happen is that our administrators get locked out of Microsoft 365. That wouldn't be very good. So what Microsoft recommend is that we create 2 emergency access accounts. These are also known as breakglass accounts, and they should be used only in emergency. Now, of course, these accounts should have MFA enabled, and they should be excluded from the conditional access policies that we created earlier. Now, a great way to have MFA with these accounts is to use a hardware security key. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so what have I done? Well, you can see here, look, I've created a new user called breakglass1. And the extension of this account isn't my normal domain. I'm using the standard onmicrosoft.com. So what I'm doing there is I'm isolating it from our domain name. This is a global admin, and I've given it a massive long password. You can also see here, look, it's part of a group called Exclude from Conditional Access. So if I go over to Teams and Groups, active teams and groups, security groups, I've created a security group called Exclude from Conditional Access. If I go to the Members tab, you can see that this account is a member of the group called Exclude from Conditional Access. Now, if I head back over to the Entra Admin Center, and if I go to Protection and Conditional Access and look at my 3 policies that I've created, so again, just ignore these because these were done for previous videos. It's a test tenancy. But these 3 that I've created here, so require multi-factor authentication for admins, and we look at who we're assigning this to. So we're assigning it to all those roles, but what we've done now is we've excluded a group called Exclude from Conditional Access. So that's the best way to set this up. So my breakglass account is excluded from this conditional access policy. I've excluded it too from the other conditional access policies that I've created. But of course, we still need to protect this account with MFA. So I've logged into the account here. This is the breakglass account. What I'm going to do is browse to here, aka.ms mysecurityinfo. Now, as you can see on the account at the minute, we've of course got a password, we've got the Authenticator app for push authentication, and we've got a pass key. But I'm also going to add a YubiKey hardware key. This is one of my favorite types of authentication for breakglass accounts and for admin accounts. If I just show you which one I've got, it's this one here. So I've got the YubiKey 5 NFC. It's just a USB device. So what you need to do to get this working with your Microsoft 365, I would recommend you go over to this page here, which gives you all the hardware FIDO2 AA GUIDs. Now you find your device. So mine is this one here, and it's got firmware of 5.4. So this is the GUID I need. So if I copy that and go back to Entra, go to Authentication Methods, and within Passkey FIDO2, I go over to Configure, and I've already got this in here, but I would add AA GUID, and I would just simply copy that in here. But as you can see, I've already got it listed, so I can save that. So I've got this listed in here. So if I just go back to my page again, and I add a sign-in method, this time I'm going to add a security key. I can click on Add, click on Next, go through the MFA. Okay, this is an NFC device. Click on Next, click on OK, click on OK. Now I just simply insert the security key into my USB port on my computer. Now it wants a PIN, so I create a PIN. Now it's important to keep this PIN in a really safe place, maybe a password manager or something like that. And then I touch the security key with my finger. And that has now set up. So I click on OK. It wants a name for this. Maybe give it a name like that. Click on Next. And you can see that we've now got the security key registered. So these security keys are really handy. You can keep them in, as I've put here, in the safe in the office. And they're not tied to someone's phone. They're not part of the telecommunications network like SMS and voice. So they're a really good method for your Microsoft 365 admin accounts in general. So there you have it. That is my 7-step process to better MFA in Microsoft 365. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Look forward to seeing you again soon.